Hello children, good morning everyone. This is Priya here from Alpha International CBSE School, Bahur. So today we are going to discuss part 2 of Geography Chapter 2 Forest and Wildlife Resources. In the last part, it means part 1, we have discussed regarding what is biodiversity, what is flora, fauna and the species. We have classified the species also, right? So these are the things what we have discussed in session 1. Now in session 2, we are going to discuss how we are going to save the forest which is in our hands. Okay. So this is today's session and let us go into the class. Okay. So today's first slide is, why do we need to conserve our forest and wildlife? Conservation preserves ecological diversity and our life support systems like water, air and soil. It also preserves the genetic diversity of plants and animals for better growth of species and breeding. So children, why should we need to conserve our forest and wildlife? We are discussing that we have to conserve. Why? What is meant by conserve? Like how we have to balance, how we have to save our earth. Like how we have, saving our earth in the sense we have to save our forest and wildlife. That is nothing more than on the earth, right? Only wildlife, forest and water, land. These are all the things what is the earth is, right? So we have to conserve, we have to save our earth, so we have to save our forest and wildlife also. So how can we do that? How can we save? It is our duty, our responsibility to conserve, right? So what are the things why we should do that? Because it keeps an ecological balance. It balances. Conserving the wildlife means balancing that. And then it helps to keep the forest green because the carnivorous animals like the tiger you can take, or lions, or else you can take like wolf, hyenas, all those are carnivorous animals which eats flesh, meat, right? So these type of carnivorous animals keeps a balance of herbivorous animals. What is meant by herbivorous? It means the animals which depend on trees and plants for food, right? Yes. So these carnivorous hunts these herbivores such as like deer, rabbit and some sort of animals like sometimes even elephants and giraffes are being hunted by whom? By the carnivorous animals. So these carnivorous animals keep the balance of herbivores by killing them. You will be thinking how can they balance the forest life like by killing the animals? Because if it doesn't kill these herbivorous animals, so many herbivores will be improved, like develop, more number of will be, like the number of herbivorous animals will be increasing. Then it starts eating all the plants and trees, then there will be no trees and plants at all, right? Then there will be a scarcity of water, scarcity of rain. So these carnivorous animals hence and so that the balanced ecosystem can be balanced. And why forest is important here? Forest gives us free oxygen, vegetables, fruits, medicines and more rubber, fiber, etc. Right? Yes. If we cut the forest, then it will make the wild animals homeless. If we go on like for our personal use or for industrial use, if we cut the trees, forest, then what will happen? All the forest animals will become homeless and at last they will come and fall on us. It means they will come and they can harm the people who are living nearby. For why it is, for what it is killing? Only for shelter and food, right? So because of shelter and food, it starts hurting the people who are living nearby those forests. So we must not cut the forest. And I hope this will help you children to understand why should we need to conserve our forest and wildlife. Being a human, it is a must for us to conserve our forest and our wildlife. Okay. So the next one is conservation of forest and wildlife in India. In Indian Wildlife Protection Act. So the Indian Wildlife Protection Act was implemented in 1972. The aim of the program was towards protecting the remaining population of certain endangered species by banning hunting, giving legal protection to their habitats and restricting trade in wildlife. Central and many state governments established national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. The central government also announced several projects for protecting specific animals which were gravely threatened, including the tiger. So, children, the conservation of forest and wildlife in India. This conservation preserves the ecological diversity. What does it do? It preserves the ecological diversity on our life support systems like water, air and soil. So due to this demand, what demand? Due to this conservationist demand. Who are those conservation? The people who are willing to save our earth are called as conservationists. And due to conservationist demand, the Indian Wildlife Act, Indian Wildlife Protection Act, an organization which is ready to help our wildlife. Okay, in the Indian Wildlife Protection Act was started in 1972, like with various provisions for protecting these living beings. Not only animals, plants also comes under living beings only if they are immovable living beings. So never hurt plant and trees. Even for fun's sake also don't pluck the leaves and twigs from the plants and trees, because children, they are also living beings. They have also sense like what we have. They are just immovable. The plants and trees are immovable. If anybody hurt us, we can just feel and we can give back our expression, like give back our feeling, emotions. The plants has nothing to do. They can feel the pain. They feel the pain what we feel, but they cannot express it. So never hurt the plants, for God's sake, children. And now, so because of this, the various provisions provided for protecting habitats. Okay, children. So this is how and when the Indian Wildlife Protection Act was implemented in 1972 for what? Protecting the habitats like wildlife and forests. So the aim of the program was protecting the remaining population of certain endangered species by banning hunting. So what is the main aim of this act? The main aim of the formation of this Indian Wildlife Act is, the goal for them is only to protect the remaining population. Already many animals have been extinct, okay, endangered. Now, only they have to protect the remaining population of certain endangered. Even now some animals were in endangered condition, right? We have discussed in last session. So they want to protect the remaining population of those certain endangered species. By how can they protect? They ban hunting. You all know hunting deers and wild animals is an offensive thing. You all know, right? We can't hunt such things. Even the squirrels also, we must not hunt them. So they have created some rules by banning hunting, like giving legal protection to their habitats and restricting the trade in wildlife. These selling and buying of all these wildlife trees, forest trees and some wildlife which live, wild animals are also has been restricted. And at the central and many state governments established national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. Why only because if even though they are giving all these banned things and legal protection also, even still are human, some of the people still they are trying to hurt those animals, they are trying to kill those animals for the sake of making money. So because of this, in many countries, all the central and state governments started establishing national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. The central government also announced several projects for protecting specific animals which are gravely threatened, including the tiger, the one-horned rhinoceros and others. Mainly the aim is regarding the tigers and the rhinoceros only being hunted for the trade purpose. So the central government also announced several projects to protect these animals. And Project Tiger was also launched, children. Project Tiger was also launched. And the next thing is, the project means the Project Tiger was also launched by the government of India in the year, which year? 1973. Why? Because to save these endangered species of tigers, tigers came under the list of endangered species. So they want to save these tigers. So Project Tiger was also launched in India in the year 1973. So under Wildlife Act of 1980 and 1986, several hundred butterflies, moths, beetles and one dragonfly have been added to the list of protected species. So there will be some list of animals and birds and insects which government has to protect. So in that list, under that Wildlife Act list, in the year 1980 and 1986, several hundred species of butterflies, moths and beetles, beetles also is an insect, and one dragonfly species was also added in that list to protect the species. And in 1991, for the first time, plants were added to the list starting with 6 species. Because before they started the act only to protect the animals. Now we all, because scientifically proven that plants are also the living beings and they have also all the pains, good and bad, which we feel physically, not mentally, children, physically. So when scientifically proven, the plants were also added in that list in the year 1991. This is the first time the plants were also added in that list. They have started this list with 6 species. You all know, right? Like cutting down the sandalwood trees, red sandal, teak trees, everything is under legal protection. Even we can grow the trees. We can buy teak tree, we can buy sandal tree and we can grow the tree. We have right to grow. Even though that one tree is grown by us, we don't have right to cut the tree. So these are the legal things which the central and state governments have started to protect the wildlife and forest in India. Okay, children? Yes. So the next thing is government's categorization of forest. So in this we are going to see how government categorize the forest. It means categorization means separating, segregating the types, listing out according to its types. So let us see in this how the government categorize the forest. So the types and distribution of forest and wildlife resources. So in India, much of its forest and wildlife resources are either owned by managed by the government. You all know 99%, not even 99, 100%. In India, most of the forest and wildlife resources were either owned or by managed only by the government with the help of whom? Through the forest department or other government departments. Right? Yes. And these, according to that, the forests are classified under these 3 categories which I have mentioned here in the blue fonts. Okay. In this, the first one is reserved forest. Reserve forest, more than half of the total forest land has been declared reserve forest. Reserve forests are regarded as the most valuable as far as the conservation of forests and wildlife resources are concerned. And these reserve forests, these forests are regarded as the most valuable. Why? Because as far as the conservation of the forest and wildlife are concerned, it covers half of the total forest land. It covers maximum part of the forest land. So, these comes under the reserve forest. And next one, protected forest. Almost one-third of the total forest area is protected forest as declared by the forest department. So this forest land are protected from any further depletion. So this forest land are protected by what? From any other further depletion. Almost one-third of the total forest area is a protected forest because they want to not to, the depletion part should not go on increase. To stop that, they had segregated some sort of things under the protected forest. So the last one is unclassed forest. These are other forests and wastelands belonging to both government and private individuals and communities. So these unclassed forests means like this wastelands, they just give these land, the government give these lands for lease also to some private things, or government itself they will plant some organic products for the purpose of people, or else they will just give these lands as a lease product to some private communities, individuals, so that they can use it, but they will paying the government a tax and the payment also. So those types of lands comes under unclassed forest. So that's it, children. So the next thing is new trends in conservation policy. So the increased biodiversity, the conservation projects are now focusing on biodiversity rather than on a few of its components. There is now a more intensive search of different conservation measures. Increasingly, even insects are beginning to find a place in conservation planning. In the Notification and Wildlife Act of 1980 and 1986, several hundred butterflies, moths, beetles and one dragonfly have been added to the list in the protected species. In 1991, for the first time, plants were also added to the list starting with 6 species. This is what we have discussed in the last slide. So again going back to this categorization forest. Now we have discussed regarding the insects and animals and all, right? Now according to the Protection Act, now let us discuss about all these 3 types of categories in detail. So the first one is what? Reserve forest. Reserve forest means more than 50% regarded as the most valuable land of forest and wildlife resources, and protected forest is almost one-third of forest area on. This is protected from any further depletion. The third one is unclassed forest. These are other forests and wastelands belonging to both government and private individuals and communities. So children, here if we look into this directly, Madhya Pradesh. In Madhya Pradesh, 75% of forests are there under permanent forest estates. And Bihar, Haryana, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, Orissa and Rajasthan comes under there are more number of protected forests in those areas. And in Jammu and Kashmir, Andhra Pradesh, Uttaranchal, then Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal and Maharashtra. In these areas we have more reserved forests. And all these states and parts of Gujarat, high percent of unclassed forests. In the parts of Gujarat, what we have? These wastelands. Okay. Now, classifying the forest areas, forest can be classified broadly into three categories, that is reserved, protected and what other thing? Unclassed. So, both reserved and protected forests are the part of permanent forest estates. Now, reserved forests are those which are which cover more than nearly 50% of the area, and they are considered as most valuable in terms of preservation of the forest and wildlife. The protected lands means the protected forests are those which are protected from any further depletion. Okay, 75% of the forest area in Madhya Pradesh is protected. In Bihar, Haryana, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, Orissa and Rajasthan, you have higher proportions of protected forests. In contrast to that, when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir and Andhra Pradesh, Uttaranchal and Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal and Maharashtra, you have more proportions of reserve forests. So, all of the northeast states along with parts of Gujarat have high proportions of what? Unclassed forests, which is not categorized either or as preserved or protected. So, this is the clear explanation for these parts like the conservation policy and then children, the reserve forest, protected forest and unclassed forest. Understood clearly? So today's activity is, have you noticed any activity which leads to the loss of biodiversity around you? Write a note on it and suggest some measures to prevent it. Children, this activity is like we are asking you that you have noticed, we have discussed about all these causes for loss of biodiversity, which is damaging our earth. So, we are asking that, have you noticed any such things which is damaging our environment around you? Did you people notice that? But don't copy this from the internet. You just write your experience. When and where you have seen such sort of things which is making like loss of biodiversity means which is damaging our forest and wildlife. Have you experienced that? And then you also write along with that. First you write what was your experience, where did you see all those things, where did you notice and all, and below that you write your suggestion. If you were in that place or if you saw that, if you were about to change that situation, what you will do, what are some measures to prevent such things. It means you have come across a man is just cutting down all the trees. It is also a loss of biodiversity, right? So at that situation, what is your idea to prevent cutting the trees? Like that, you can write whatever you have seen in your life, like a slice of life. So write your experience where you have faced this such sort of damages to the environment, and also write the suggestions how you can prevent it. Children, I am telling you clearly again and again, when I am giving the activity, do the activity and post it in the group. Don't post the classwork content. We are not asking you to post the classwork content. We are asking you to do the activity and post. Every time you are not posting the activity, you are just writing the classwork and posting it. This time we will not accept if you are not posting it. Okay, so you have to do the activity and then you have to post it. Okay, children. So with this, let us end this session and then let us meet in another session with something interesting and something which gives us a private lesson that changes the environment and society. Okay, children, stay safe, and this is Priya signing off from Alpha International CBSE School, Bahur. Thank you, children. Bye.